they're back to what you think is functioning, because now they're getting up, they're doing small tasks, they're, you know,
making a little bit of progress.
To be progressing. But then what I had to learn is, with bipolar disorder, in most disorders, you have to meet a certain number of criteria. One of the criteria for bipolar disorder is they have to have a manic episode for 12 days. So the average person, if you see somebody, you're not going to really count. But once I understood what I had to look for, when my mom would go into the hospital because maybe she wasn't sleeping and we had to regulate her meds because she wasn't taking her meds, which is another issue. She would come home, she would be regular, and so I would think, and I would start counting the days. And then, sure enough, day 12, after being this high, she crashed right back down to that immediate low. So I was able to, and my mom was extremely high functioning because she's very intelligent, very verbal, she can talk. So a lot of the doctors did not understand. And because she had been diagnosed, and because most people who are diagnosed with bipolar have an early onset in their 20s, usually mid to late 20s, early 30s, it was very abnormal for my mom to have an onset in her mid to late 40s.
Right.
So she sat on a panel with 20 doctors at USC. And, you know, I sat with them, but just to really talk, because when she was in the hospital, she was running the groups. She was able to sit in her own one-on-one and verbalize everything, and but it was to the extent that when you talk to her, it makes sense. You get what I'm saying? The gist of what she's saying makes perfect sense, but it's just a little bit to the left, or it becomes obsessive. Because the one thing about manic episodes is they can become very fixated on something. You know, whether they become hypersexual, hyper-religious, hyper-aggressive. My mom is not an aggressive or physical person, but during that time, she would get very agitated. Because you don't feel good, you're not comfortable, you're out of whack, and you know it. That's the other thing. When you have an awareness, when you know something is wrong and something's not right, but you just can't fix it or figure out what it is, that in itself can eat away at you. So getting in that master's program and being able to sit with other doctors who are my teachers, and we would talk about our real life instances, I was providing great resources, things that I didn't have access to, because I navigated through the DMH on my own with my mom for the first couple of years. Because mental health really wasn't a big thing back then either. It's just coming to the forefront in these last, 5 or so years. Right. So imagine how it was in 2008, when all we had was county USC outpatient. You know, psych ER. There was no outpatient, actually. It was just a psych, the ER. You have to go every 30 days, get your med refills, unless you had a doctor. And, mental health is that pink elephant that a lot of people, regardless of the culture, don't want to talk about. They don't want to speak that it exists. They think that it's something wrong. But to me, it's life, because everybody deals with trauma different. Everybody internalizes different. Everybody has their own experience with certain things. And we're taught to suppress a lot of shit and just, be tough. Boys, men don't cry. Women play every role. But we forget that we're all still human.
Right. And you gotta have some type of release, though. You know what I mean? You have to have some type of release, because if not, then that joint gonna keep snowballing on you. Boom, 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 bam. It's gonna blow up. Okay.
Yeah, so. And that's really what that program taught me, was that I was doing everything that I could do. That at some point my mom had to become accountable for some of her things, like going to group, taking her medication.
You know what? Wait, let me say this real quick, not to cut you off. When it comes to, a person, if you're trying to help somebody to get healthy, you know what I mean? You can't want it more than them. You know what I mean? It becomes a point where, your health, you start dragging somebody. You don't want to do that. You know what I mean? It comes a point, and that's how, I had to get to that point myself, to where it's like, how bad do you really want this? Another person can't want it more than you want it for yourself.
Yeah, but the one thing I can say that's tough in the sense of mental health is, when someone is physically disabled, you know what it is. Your arm is broken, your leg is broken, you can't use this, you can't use that.
Right.
When you're dealing with mental health, you don't know what it is.
Mm.
They could wake up and be fine, and then all of a sudden, the sky's not bright enough outside. They just saw something that triggered a memory or, whatever. The meds, the side effect of the med just came on, which is fogginess, and they can't figure out what they need to do for the day, or they got stuff to do, but they can't get up because they're so confused. And, I have a lot of clients who, when I used to work in social services, the biggest thing was getting adjusted to meds. It takes such a toll on your body, which is why, and a lot of people don't know this, but bipolar is a mood disorder. Any mood disorder, you are not supposed to diagnose anyone under the age of 19 with a mood disorder.
Mm.
Reason being is because it can be a chemical imbalance, and a lot of people go through puberty, as we know, and that is an imbalance. Kids come out of it. So that's why anyone under the age of 18, mood disorders, you cannot. Now, there are certain disorders you can, but then there's certain criteria like that off top, like, hey, yeah,
Okay.
this is, it's undeniable.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, life, they say life is a mood.
Right. So let me ask you this: as far as like, okay, you help your mom and things like that. As far as like what you're doing, as far as the CBD was that, did you infuse that as far as like helping your mom out? There were some things she was going through.
Initially, I was more into the cannabis side with my mom when I first started.
Okay.
So, but then even with that, sometimes, especially when you're taking meds and as a person's chemicals balance and imbalance, the side effects sometimes of weed can be paranoia and it gets extreme. And she didn't really like it. How I got into it was a good friend of mine. Shout out to my girl Susie Johnson, who's also my business
partner.
partner.
Shout out to Susie Johnson right now, wherever you at. Woo, 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 woo.
She's also my business partner for Two Brown Gurlzz. But we sat down, and she's in the healthcare field also, and she gave me the recipe to create the bomb. And I just started playing with it, but I already knew what the healing properties of CBD and, THC actually was. And so I started creating it, and it was something that I started using. But of course, I didn't want to be my own best advocate. So I have a lot of people around me because of, I used to play basketball, and some of my elderly family, they had just small things, aches and pains. And I've done my research. I have the books, and I started putting it out there.
Okay.
And I would talk to people, and it was instantaneous, like sitting right here, talk to them, and I tell them, hey, and I'm like, here, try rub it on, and within minutes, the stiffness, the achiness, certain things that they were dealing with were subsiding.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that CBD is actually great for inflammation, great for swelling, it's good for mood, depression, insomnia. So when I got more into just the pain bomb, and I actually started doing, playing more with the raw actual CBD.
And that looked powerful, right? Wait, hold up. Bring that back on camera now. That looked powerful. What is that?
This is actually raw CBD oil.
Oh, my God. Don't drink that, y'all. Don't drink that.
You actually can.
Don't do it, though.
You actually can. I actually sell it in a bottle like this. You take about a drop or two every night because it's great for sleep and insomnia.
Now a drop. Now don't take it to the head. No.
No.
Okay.
No. So I would say like that much.
Because my followers, this is Gangsta Holistic, so they are kind of gangster. They might treat it like a 40 ounce, so you got to let them know.
That's fine. They're going to be asleep for 40 hours.
He said, y'all going to be knocked out.
But no, I do.